So you made it. You installed Home Assistant, which is already quite a challenge in itself. And now you're staring at an empty dashboard of maybe some devices here and there that were automatically discovered on your network. You start adding your smart devices. Some are easy to set up and some others feel almost impossible to integrate. And that's just when the doubts begin. Was this actually worth it? Or how do I go from this to a fully automated hands-free smart home with a beautiful dashboard? Let me get straight to the point. Even though Home Assistant has made huge progress in becoming more and more beginner-friendly, it will never be as simple or as intuitive as Amazon Alexa or Apple Home. And you know what? That's actually great news, because here you are in full control. You can build tailor-made automations and systems designed exactly for your needs. And that's what's actually make Home Assistant the most powerful smart home platform available today. However, without proper guidance, it's easy or very easy to feel overwhelmed. There are so many features, so many decisions, and so many possible mistakes you can do. So in this video, I'll give you a clear beginner roadmap and the key steps you should follow to build your dream smart home. This will help you focus on what truly matters, avoiding the most common frustration, and most importantly, enjoy the journey. Let's get started. The first obvious thing that you should do first is add your devices to Home Assistant. After all, that was the main intention behind Home Assistant, connecting everything together. But before all that, you probably had one burning question. How do I know which device should I buy? And my answer to this is don't buy anything yet. I'm sure your house already has a ton of devices that you can already add to Home Assistant. Your router, smart TV, any Chromecast or Alexa device, and of course your phones, tablets, and computer. They are the smartest devices that you will own, and they are full of sensors that you can leverage directly from Home Assistant. Now, if you already have or plan to buy on some devices, a quick Google search including the device model you already have or looking to buy, followed by the keyword Home Assistant, will show you if it's possible to integrate it to Home Assistant. At this point, you may even stumble on some people being able to add a specific device to Home Assistant when you can't find the integration on your end. Home Assistant has an astonishing library of more than 3,000 integrations that are guaranteed to work, but some devices are not officially supported. It's either because someone didn't do the integration yet, or because the brand didn't propose or doesn't want to propose any API, open API to expose to Home Assistant. And this is where HACS come into play. What's the acronym already of HACS? It stands for Home Assistant Community Store. This is a non-official library of integrations that are made by third-party developers. It is made to add non-supported devices to Home Assistant. You can install HACS to Home Assistant by just following the guide on their website, but be mindful that since those integrations are not officially supported by Home Assistant, they may stop working when you update Home Assistant, of course. But what if you're looking for something new with a guaranteed compatibility? For this, you can just buy devices that operate on a standard, like Matter, for example. This evolving standard supports more and more device types with each update. As per today, you can buy Matter locks, lights, sensors, robots, and lately even cameras. But be careful, Matter isn't magic, and the Matter compatible devices mean that they work with an underlying technology that is called either Wi-Fi or Thread. For the latter, you will need a bridge, and you won't be able to connect them to Home Assistant directly. As per today, the Thread and Home Assistant combo is not quite working perfectly yet, so make sure that you know what you're doing when you're buying a Matter over Thread device. Basically, you have two choices when it comes to adding Thread devices to Home Assistant. You can either build a Thread bridge with the Open Thread add-on, purchasing a Thread dongle, or you can exploit an existing Thread network that may have already been created by some smart devices that you may have on your network. For example, those ones, if you have any, you probably have a Thread network already. Either way, Home Assistant will detect those Thread networks nearby and automatically let you know if they exist. Talking about bridges and hubs, a crazy amount of incredible devices operate with the ZigBee protocol. Getting ZigBee devices for your smart home is a must, and you will also need a bridge to add them to Home Assistant. Creating your own ZigBee bridge is something you should absolutely do, by the way. To do this, you need a ZigBee dongle that you would ideally plug into your Home Assistant server or put on your network. After this, you can proceed in two different ways. The easy way is to add the native Home Assistant ZigBee home automation, or called ZHA, which has almost no configuration required. It's almost plug and play. However, some device compatibility might be limited. So if you want to get the best out of your ZigBee devices, you should go for the more slightly complex way. In reality, it's just the setup that is a bit more complex. Afterwards, it's almost plug and play. We're talking about ZigBee to MQTT. It's an add-on that you can download on Home Assistant. They have a nice guide on their website, and the Mosquito add-on. Why the Mosquito add-on, you may ask? Because ZigBee to MQTT converts ZigBee data into MQTT, hence the name. MQTT is a lightweight protocol for communication, but you don't really have to care much about that. Just configure Mosquito and ZigBee to MQTT together and you should be good to go. Once again, they have a really nice guide on their website, on the ZigBee to MQTT website, telling you step by step what you should do in order to build your ZigBee to MQTT network. Oh, and something I want to tell you is that you may often find dongles that say that they can both handle ZigBee and Thread at the same time. I honestly highly advise you against this. It's not a stable thing yet. Get 2 different dongles, even if in theory one could do both. Talking from experience here. Now, I'm well aware that all of this can feel very overwhelming, and it's true, it is, so take it easy. Try to first add your devices to Home Assistant, the one that Home Assistant detects automatically, probably devices that are already connected on your Wi-Fi network, and step by step try to add compatibility to your Home Assistant instance. With ZigBee, Thread, custom integrations, you don't have to have everything connected immediately. Finally, if you need more advice on what you need to buy, check out the Smart Home Stack. It's a tool I've built recently where I've put all of the devices that I currently use or that I consider worth buying. I'm also putting little by little some info on most devices, including their protocol and if it works with Home Assistant. You can find the link in my video description. Once you've added your devices, you will want to automate them. But where should you start actually? A nice way to do things is to work by project. Do not create aimless automations. For example, you may want to start by automating your lights. Then maybe the heating and cooling system, the shutters, robots, and so on. I'd actually suggest you start by automating your lights first. Why? Because it's a very nice first project. It can be as simple as having a motion sensor linked to a smart bulb and as complex as you want it to be. With, for example, an indoor-based presence lighting automation, and maybe even using smart lights as a way to notify people in your home. And from there you can just escalate in complexity. On Home Assistant, automations are composed of 3 elements. First, the trigger. It can be anything. A sensor detecting something, the sun that sets, a specific hour, literally anything. You can have multiple triggers for each automation. Then you have the action sequence, which is a list of actions that you want to run once the automation has been triggered. For example, locking the doors, turning down the heater, waiting 60 seconds, and turning off the lights. Finally, the last element is the condition. Here you can set 1 or more conditions that, if not respected, will prevent the execution of the action sequence. For example, making sure that the lights only turn on when the sun is set. Automations have quite the learning curve on Home Assistant, because there are so many things that you can do, so definitely you want to experiment all that. Since this is where the smart home will start to actually impact not only you but the people you live with, I'd suggest you start prototyping your automations on isolated rooms to just make sure that your system works great once you deploy it to other rooms. And for this specific reason, you have to make sure that they work reliably, not only for you, but for all the people living with you. And this is what takes us to an important part of building your smart home. Availability. Say you've created your smart home, you're comfortable with Home Assistant now, you have a few automations going on. Those automations can manage non-critical devices such as lighting, and other actually operate on critical systems such as heating or door locks, for example. And when you give such an important power to a software, it makes you responsible to make sure that it can sustain unavoidable issues. I'm talking about power outbreaks, internet cuts, system failures, and anything that will prevent your system to work the way you want it to. And there's a lot of things that you can do to make sure that your smart home becomes as resilient as possible. Let's talk about power cuts, for example. You actually have to anticipate 2 states, when the power is out and when the power is back. You want to make sure that the core of your system, Home Assistant, stays on during a power cut, even if all your appliances are off. Why, you may ask? Because when the power is back, you don't want to turn on Home Assistant manually and wait before your house becomes usable again. A power cut may last a second, a few minutes, or even a couple of hours in certain places. And you have to be absolutely prepared for that. Ideally, you should get a UPS, which stands for uninterrupted power supply. Pick one that has enough power so that it can sustain up to 15 to 30 minutes with all the devices that you want to keep running. On my setup, I have the mini PC running Home Assistant plugged, my NAS, and my Starlink router. I programmed the UPS to keep powering my devices until the battery reaches 20%. After that, I programmed my NAS and Home Assistant to power off gracefully by simply giving them the power off command. But then what happens when the power is back on? All my computers and servers are programmed to turn back when power is back. It's something that you can actually configure in the BIOS. This way I don't have to worry about anything, everything is handled smoothly. Ideally, you should also configure your smart device's behavior when the power is back. When it comes to lights, for example, when they're back on after a power outage, they may turn on even if they were off before the outage. The setting that you want to look for is usually called Restore Previous State After Power Outage. And since we're talking about devices, I really want to insist on the fact that you should make sure that all of your devices work locally. If you're not aware, on an average of every 3 months, there is a cloud incident that happens at some smart device company. I think we all remember the Cloud Nest incident that left thousands of households in the cold. Plus, by making sure that your devices work locally, you could avoid being spied on, which is a luxury today. So do yourself a favor and cut that internet connection from your smart devices. And if any device stops working after you cut internet connection, get a refund as soon as possible. Finally, making Home Assistant backups goes without saying, of course. You can make them automatically or automate them via Home Assistant directly. There are also some convenient add-ons which help you doing just that and upload them somewhere safe. All in all, you can picture it like this. You should make sure that your smart home works reliably even if you're not there, or without having to repair it every time something unexpected happens. So yeah, I think you got it. Availability is not the funniest topic when it comes to smart home. However, better safe than sorry. Now let's talk about something we both love. A good debate actually. Automation versus voice assistant versus dashboard. Which one should you prioritize? Well, in an ideal smart home, your system works on what we call ambient intelligence, where your smart home knows what you need and acts on it before you even ask for it, without the need for any voice assistant nor dashboard. However, we are obviously not there yet, but you can still and should aim for a fully automated and autonomous smart home. In fact, with all the beautiful contributions that we can find online, we're often tempted to create and spend so much time on creating beautiful dashboards. Who can blame us actually? But to make the most of your smart home, you should first and foremost try to automate things. This instead of relying on manual control, whether it's from a tablet, a voice assistant, or worse, an app on your phone. Imagine this scenario. You buy some smart lights, you install them in your bedroom thinking, great, I will stop using the light switch from now on. You pair them, you maybe add them to your beautiful Home Assistant dashboard, and now to turn on the lights in your bedroom, you need to pull up your phone, unlock it, wait for the app to load, scroll to the light, and tap on it, before you just had to flip a switch. Not much of an improvement, right? To help you decide what makes the most sense, I created the Should You Automate It framework that you can use for literally anything that you want to add to your smart home. The goal is not to stay away from dashboards and voice assistants, but rather prioritize automations and improving comfort for all the users inside the smart home, and not just you. There are even particular cases where you can't automate everything, but you can trigger a series of actions manually. For example, a night routine that would lock the doors, turn off the lights, and regulate temperature. It's not very easy to predict and automate. But you could basically fire the night routine with the press of a button on your nightstand, for example. It's actually a good compromise. With that said, dashboards and voice assistants are a great way to expose a limited number of devices and actions to the people you live with. For example, you could let them control the thermostat and the lights in the rooms that matter the most for them. We've seen that people love to endlessly fight online about Android versus iOS, and if you live in a home where the residents use both, you could actually expose some devices from Home Assistant to Apple Home and Google Home at the same time, making everyone happy in the end. Technically, it means that Home Assistant could become your back end where you design all of the main systems and automations, while off-the-shelf ecosystems like Alexa or HomeKit could be the front-end interface for your inhabitants. It's pretty convenient since both Android and iOS have tight integrations with their own automation platform. So instead of choosing one, you can make the best of both worlds. So up until now, we've seen that we need to prioritize automations to create the working core of a smart home, but dashboards remain an essential part of the overall experience. A dashboard has two main objectives. First, letting you know what's happening inside your house at a glance so you don't have to go and look for each device manually. And second, let you control the devices that you can't or choose not to automate. So ideally, how should you design your dashboard? I personally don't believe in a one-size-fits-all dashboard, since you can have a dashboard displayed on various devices with different screen sizes and in different locations even. I actually think it's appropriate to design the dashboard for each context. Now, don't get me wrong, you don't have to design complicated dashboards, but think about these three different situations. First situation, you're in the living room, you have a small tablet next to your couch. What should it display and allow you to control? Think about it for a second. In my opinion, you could have media player controls for the TV that you're watching, like the volume or channel, but also the thermostat of the radiator and the lights that are in the room. Second situation, you're in a corridor in your home, you have a tablet on the wall. What should it display? Probably robot vacuum controls, floor level heating, and maybe even notification broadcast. Third situation, you're outside, you pick up your phone and open Home Assistant. What information are you looking for? Probably anything related to security, lock status and control, if the doors are open, camera feeds, and maybe even check if anything was left on, and even temperature control. See, a dashboard can be many things. So when you check Home Assistant, be mindful of what is it that you're looking for exactly in each particular context. And I'm sure that by doing this, you will know precisely how to design your next dashboard. Now, when it comes to creating your very first dashboard on Home Assistant, the first step is to have something very simple, but functional. Thankfully, in the last couple of updates, the Home Assistant team made great UI and UX improvement to their native dashboard builder. So you can definitely create a very good looking dashboard quite easily actually without a single line of code. Take a look at my wall tablet dashboard at the entry. It's not perfect and definitely need refinement, I agree, but it gets the job done. I didn't have to touch any YAML code to build it. I can see the lock status, camera feed, and even when I'm entering home, I can immediately see who's at home and which room is occupied. Once you get comfortable playing around with the Home Assistant dashboard builder, something that you will want to do is conditional display. Notice the visibility tab on each card that you add. This is very powerful. It allows you to display any element on your dashboard based on different conditions. A simple example may be when a sensor battery that you have is below 20%. You may want to display it on your dashboard. In fact, there are actually no reason to submerge you with information when it's not important, such as battery level, for example. You can even go as far as showing different cards depending on your location. If you're a fan of indoor-based presence, a fun project would be to locate your phone in order to only show controls relative to the room that you're in, or if you're inside or outside your house. It's all nice and cool, but we haven't talked about a crucial topic. How do you access Home Assistant from outside your house? By default, Home Assistant is local, and it should stay like this until you are confident enough to expose it online. There are multiple ways to do this, and unfortunately, I often see people and my clients going for the worst way possible. But not everyone is a network expert, and not even myself, but I can give you some directions. First of all, do not, and I repeat, do not open ports on your firewall or router. Don't expose your public IP either. In my opinion, the easiest and safest ways that you can remotely access your Home Assistant instance are the following. First, subscribing to the Home Assistant Cloud, which will provide a secure access to your instance, amongst a few other perks. It's also a great way to support the development of Home Assistant. Second, installing Tailscale. It's a personal VPN solution which works with WireGuard under the hood. Tailscale make it super easy to set up, especially since you can download it as an add-on on Home Assistant, and they have applications for all of your devices. It works great and it's super fast. Now, if you don't trust Tailscale, feel free to create your own VPN tunnel or create a reverse proxy. But for convenience sake, the two options that I've given won't compromise your security. In fact, security and networking in general is also an important topic of smart home and actually would require a dedicated video. So let me know in the comments if this could interest you. Building a reliable smart home from scratch is not as easy as it seems, but with the right guidance, you can focus on what matters most and actually enjoy the building experience. This video established a general roadmap and guidance on the most important steps when it comes to building your smart home with Home Assistant, which is actually something that we don't often see online. There are a lot of hands-on tutorials out there, which is great, but I genuinely believe that building a smart home isn't just about DIYing anymore. Of course, there's a lot of fun in DIYing and experimenting, but having a clear overview and high-level knowledge of what you should actually do will help you build a smart home that seriously improves the comfort of the most important place in our lives, our home. I sincerely hope that this video was helpful. Let me know in the comments what I should cover next, and I'll see you soon. Bye.